Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. This is about Tabular and how it looks. So, the font is questionable. For data
These
set,
are not Wolfram language. These are examples we took from elsewhere of the sorts of things that we want to be able to do.
I see. Okay, all right, fine.
Um,
Okay, all right. Gotta get some of that.
right. And so open the sample data, just go ahead and evaluate it. There's a little bit of a note in there. Um, and so as a starting
It's
point,
just beeping at me. It's not letting me evaluate this.
interesting.
What's the evaluator?
Right.
What's the notebook about?
It's it's the default kernel,
Okay,
otherwise it would say at the in the title bar.
right.
Um,
One worked. Why? This is a prototype build, so maybe there's something wrong with that.
maybe. Um, but as a starting point,
Oh, you know
tabular,
what? You know what? I selected the whole thing, and maybe in the prototype build, there's something wrong with non-evaluatable cells having been selected and asking for evaluation.
it's possible. So what I was going to say as a starter is tabular is the thing that sets its options. So that line with small diamonds equals tabular diamonds and then some other option. Um, there's also a resizing issue with the tabulars, at least in the prototype build I was using. But
Yeah, this isn't resizing wide.
yeah, um,
We have
which
people from the front end team
yeah,
know
we,
that.
we we
Yes.
do, and I
Okay.
think Jason knows about it.
That's probably a fallout of my automatic fitting stuff not playing nicely with tabular, so I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
So
All right. So I understand the original object is unaffected, obviously. Okay.
obviously, but I mean, just you know, large audience stating right. Um, and
Right.
so
Okay.
as a bit of history, Grid has a very rich syntax for how to specify things like backgrounds. And I can never remember exactly what the syntax is. Um, and so here is a pretty complicated version where we're specifying that the first column is light blue, and then after that it alternates light green and light yellow, except that the sixth column is yellow, like full yellow, and then we're not doing any row backgrounds, and then the fourth row, fifth column is magenta, and from the fifth rows to the seventh rows, from the second column to the third column is cyan. And this is all in one background option.
I understand.
And
It's
hmm,
incomprehensible. I know.
yes,
LLMs can write it, but I can't.
exactly. And so what we've done is we've split this up into row options, column options, and we've split also the sort of positional, these aren't great words, positional specifications from the structural specifications. By which I mean the things like that first bit of light blue, light green, light yellow, where we specify one and then it alternates between the two. Those are positional, and sort of no matter what you do with the tabular, the first column will be light orange, and then it's going to alternate blue and green. And so that is the row background option.
I like it.
And then we have what is currently called row background rule. I'm not 100% on the name.
I
And
understand. I mean, this is similar to what happens in I mean, in graph, we I mean, if you say blank arrow whatever, let me do that here. Ugh,
that's
not
an
right.
ordering issue, but I'm not even 100% sure whether it should
should
be
work.
pattern based or
It should work, and it's the same thing that works in the case of in vertex labels and plots,
right.
which seems
Right.
to, to me, it took a little bit of getting used to, but now that I'm used to it, it's pretty nice.
Okay. So I think it's just an order that list got reversed somehow or something internally, and it's applying the underscore case over the more specific ones somehow.
Look, at some level, this is a sparse representation, and this is a dense representation.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the differences with the rule syntax, which maybe it's something else and it shouldn't be part of the rule syntax. Maybe the rule syntax should be its own thing, is that sort of binds more tightly the background color. So that when you sort that table or do some other transformation, as it makes sense, those options are updated with the new ordering and new structure.
I think that's crazy as such. I think that this also, if the 4 here, if it's an unlabeled row, this seems very iffy to me.
What
Yeah.
the
I
idea
mean,
is
one
that
could think of it as a key column that has those.
Well, I mean, so two things. One, I understand, the iffiness, and maybe the highlighting it moves with the content sort of thing is a separate mechanism. I mean, I don't know that we want
I think it's got to
two
be
in
some kind of,
options, but maybe something else.
no, but I mean, look, okay. So it's got to be a way. It's like there's a style wrapper around that row, right? Somehow it's like that row has its data changed. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's an option form of a wrapper somehow.
Yeah. I mean,
think when you
how do
look
we
at
associate
you look at
metadata with that row?
It's just the options. So if you do, okay, so you evaluated that, and so if you do the sort by that's below it, and now you do options of that. It updated the indices.
Okay, but I think that's really weird. I mean, I think that
well
look, what the best thing to do would be, I mean, Roger was saying a key column.
Which is what we have immediately off the bottom of your screen there, if you want to look at it. I mean, okay, a little bit, not quite immediately, but
That seems much more sensible. But somehow,
right. I mean, and that one sort of has to sort with it because it's tied to that unique pair.
But I guess what we would like, I mean, I don't know if we would like it or not, but to have like an implicit key column, those things, those numbers refer to.
do we have to display every column? Is there a way of closing up a column so it isn't displayed? Hiding a column.
No, not right now.
So that's the thing. We have that in dataset, right? That didn't make it here.
No.
That's not good. Who's done an analysis of what's in dataset and not here?
I haven't done it recently.
Is Jose here? Does Jose know how this
Yes.
works?
Yes, you have to use the right button of the mouse and hide. I think
Okay.
you have to select the name. No, not use the right button.
Yeah. Hide column. Look at that. That's not.
I think we discussed this at some point, and we decided that because one can change the size of the column, in a sense, in Tabular, it's also possible to decrease the size of a column.
It's not the most elegant thing. Okay.
Sorry, I was going to say that the idea of changing the updating the option, the index, was that, you know, how do you find those indices to start with? Right? A lot of time they are probably based on some selection. So it's a content-based selection. And once you find those spatial rows and you do a sort, I think it's naturally you want those styling to go with the new order.
But I mean, I think coming
understand that
back
idea,
to
yeah.
an idea that I think Roger may have been getting close to is, you know, is there a wrapper around, say, the 4 that says this is not, you know, it's the 4 right now, not the 4 forever.
I don't think that's the right way. Look, the best way to do this would be if that row had some symbolic thing associated with the row that's right there in the row. Like if I have something where I say, I don't know, let's say I say style, disk, red, style, disk, blue. Okay. No, I didn't mean to say, well, I should have said whatever, not disk. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't I could have said anything here.
Yep.
Okay. And now I sort this. Well, guess what? Actually, let me do this properly. Let me do this with an A here. Actually, oh, this is okay. And now I do a sort, right? And, you know, well, this was a B and I sort by, you get what I'm doing. You know, the details don't matter. But the main point is, because the style is wrapped around the thing, of course it goes with the thing. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of mechanism I think we want for Tabular, but I don't know where we put that metadata.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to introduce wrappers around the rows. I mean, there aren't really rows to, you know, internally to wrap.
So what about a column that is the style column?
Yeah, so look at that, I think, because there we have names.
Well, what's this? What's this column? Does this column have any kind of name?
No.
It does not, which is annoying. I never know how to refer to it.
Well, I mean,
We have a virtual key called row number.
what is a virtual key? What does that mean?
And transform columns, so you can use, you know, pound row number to refer to the row number.
Okay.
So it's not really a column, but
Wouldn't it be nice if we could use pound style somehow?
Well, but style's not what you want. Uh,
I
I
think
mean,
what they want, Stephen, is a bit like saying having some flag that says consider row number a part of the key columns, and then you could use row number as a key. You could type row key of, say list of 4 or something, and then that, if
Yeah.
that were part of the key columns, then that would work.
Yeah.
Look, I also
Right,
would
I
like
mean-
to have it be the case that every good here is red or something. How would I do that?
We'll come to that in a sec.
No, but I think that that's going to be a mechanism that's similar to what we're looking for here. So I think
that gets beyond this. But one thing I will is that right? I think what
whatever
I've
mechanism you have for saying all rows that have a good column, in that column are red, whatever mechanism you have for that, you should also be able to say, although this is a more complicated syntax than we'd like, blah, blah, blah. Make that be red, for example.
But that won't survive sorting.
That's true. What would survive sorting is a style column.
I mean, something that uniquely defines it. Something that uniquely
I mean, I
defines the row.
like Rob's idea of the row key of 4 type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Really? I think that's messy. I mean, I think that having something where there's a
So
style column.
you are proposing a pure function.
No, I'm proposing that there's a column right after this column here, okay, which is a style column. There is another, whatever this is, whatever virtual column this is, there's another virtual column, and it's the style column. And you can access it somehow, just like you can access row number somehow. You can access style
But
somehow.
I don't see how that helps, because what we're trying to come up with is the mechanism that would populate that column.
Yeah, I guess it.
I mean, internally, I think it may do something like that, or at least we've discussed that as a possible approach.
Maybe we should move on a little bit and come back to this in a minute and see some of the rest of the
Right. I
elements
mean,
of
and
this.
in the case of columns, the column options, we always have the column keys. And so we tie to that, and of course, if you do something and move the columns around, the column options follow with. Yeah, that one has a bug somewhere, I think.
What happens if you want a color that depends on the value in that, a background color, an item style, basically, that depends on the value in that position?
There are a couple of ways of doing that, and they are past the boring section. But I mean, the boring section is also where, we have to figure some things out. Right, because Tabular has headers, at least column headers, which like grid, for example, doesn't. Dataset does. Then we have controls for controlling those independently of the rest of the column. Right, so now we get to the extreme customization. We're probably gonna have to backtrack a little bit in a minute, but that's fine. So this is row style function. We've discussed it previously. And it takes basically the row as an argument, and then you access the column values with slots. And it is essentially returning stylish information, including a couple of option types of things. In particular, background and decorator. And so I'm not sure which one you're looking at the moment, so. Or you're muted, Stephen, if you didn't mean to be.
No, I'm muted because I did mean to be.
Okay. Just checking. Sometimes people mute themselves by accident. Right, so here we're getting into the sorts of things that you were asking of. How do I change the background for a column depending on the values in that column? And we have two main mechanisms. One is the row style function, and one is the item display function. Item display function exists in dataset, and it is a function that applies individual cell by individual cell and takes the value of that cell, its position in the grid.
Right. Okay, so let's start looking at some of this stuff. Okay, so first point is what you see is not what you have. That's this case here. The fundamental what you see is not what you have. Okay. Then next thing is what happens if I wanted to make the border here, if I wanted to put a red, outline around this cell. Do I have a way to do that?
I think so. I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but
okay. But I mean, there's an item style concept in
yes.
grid, and that could potentially be used here. But I mean, so most extreme version is what you see is not what you have. What you see in terms of that's both in terms of content and in terms of the cell structure, right? Like
what do you mean by the cell structure?
Well, either the background or the frame.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So there is an intermediary, which we call decorators, which is typically add something into it, like a $sign or star, something little. It's another way to highlight an item.
Is it clear that as opposed to just rewrite the item, as opposed to just saying row of star comma hash?
I think it's in terms of usability. I think that's intermediary between. I mean, you can always do anything if you write it all yourself.
No, I understand.
But it's more demanding.
So one of the issues is sort of outside in, like, I mean, to me, the symbolic wrapper thing is really useful. And being able to wrap an element with something in such a way that that doesn't affect computation but does affect display is very, very useful and very nice and clean. And this question of whether it gets moved around when you sort the table, is obvious.
I mean, this does that. It also is efficient in the sense that even if you had 1,000,000 rows, it would only actually apply to what's shown in the window.
Yeah, okay, fine. But I mean, okay, but what I'm thinking,
So the full thing is stored in the option. It's not sort of modifying.
I know, I
Okay.
understand,
Okay.
but I'm saying, let's say, we have this notion of an item, right?
Yep.
And I'm just saying, if it has payload and then options here, and if we just make one thing happen, namely that in a tabular, there can be items and how they're stored. I mean, obviously you should store them from the outside, just like we're storing missings from the outside. You got what I'm saying?
No, I'm not sure I do.
Well, so I'm saying that even though you spray things into the tabular, that the idea would be, as far as processing is concerned, the information from um um the information about that metadata, it's stored as metadata. It's not actually stored in the tabular, in the raw tabular. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
So what I'm suggesting is that, instead of, I mean, how would I, okay, take that number there, okay? How would I change that number to being minus that number or something? Could I say map at, or what do I do there?
I mean, I would probably do it with part,
Okay.
but
So
map at might work. I don't know if I've tried map at on a tabular.
better work. Okay, so then I would say in the map at, I would say 3 comma depth. All right. What do I do here? Key? What do I do?
I mean, MapHab has not been set up to work with Tabular.
Surely it should be. Can I do a replace part?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so those things should work. Do you disagree?
Well, they can work, but they're going to be very, horribly inefficient and unpleasant compared to using transformations. And
Well, I understand that, but when you just change the data, and I mean, I don't know why they're inefficient. Why would the hell would they be inefficient?
well, as soon as you change basically the way these would have to work is by converting to normal and then converting back to tabular.
Why? Why can't
Uh,
you do this on the tabular structure?
It's not. Remember, it's a column-wise structure versus a row-wise structure.
So what?
And all these functions are made to work on row-wise structure.
No, they're not. I mean, they're just telling you this particular element.
Yeah.
Look, the fundamental point here is we don't have metadata associated with elements, rows. We sort of have some metadata associated with columns. Is that a fair statement?
I was going to say all the metadata is associated with columns, isn't it? Rob?
What metadata can you associate with a column?
The
I mean,
name,
including
the
like the type
type,
information and the name of the column and
missing.
Okay. So the problem is we don't have a way of associating metadata with other kinds of things. I don't think we even have a way of associating other metadata like style data with the column, do we? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Can somebody answer that,
we,
please?
we don't now have that. Way back when you suggested having that done through this tabular schema thing.
Okay. So, I mean, look, to me, you know, we're not going to be able to solve this style thing unless we can have metadata associated with rows, columns, elements. But it's got to look like those things are just sort of hanging out, with the row or whatever. I mean, doesn't affect computation, does affect display. Does that make sense?
I mean, to that extent, isn't that what the options are doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, because it's not actually. Look, if you
options are
extract,
metadata, and that's how it works for graphs too.
okay,
We view the options in graph basically as standard annotations. They're part of the annotation system, but they're standard, so there also happen to be options.
okay, but annotation associates things with nodes and edges, right?
Well, yeah, but that's the granularity there. We haven't added annotations to Tabular yet. You have to have a way of saying where and then what.
Okay, but so what happens if we do add annotations to Tabular? Because that's what I'm talking about. I mean, basically, I keep on saying the same thing, that we need to have some symbolic object that associates the metadata with the data.
I mean, we could still do, if we have a way of saying where, and the big problem right now is the rows, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. And one solution is row key, potentially. Okay. If you want it associated with a row or not the structure position of the row.
Well, okay. What I don't understand. If we're going to need annotations at some point, we might as well bite the bullet and put them in.
Yeah, but you don't want, I mean, these should still be the names. I mean, it's like what we do for graphs is like for many people, they don't even know about annotations, right? They use those vertex styles and vertex labels and vertex capacity.
Oh, I agree. But I'm just saying, okay, look, something like row background, it's a fine option. We can have that option. Okay.
Mhm.
But if you start saying, but how do we get some very detailed thing where we're tracking this and tracking that? The answer is it's not going to work by putting 75 options in there. We're going to need some underlying structure that you can in principle use. And then maybe for simple cases, we have options to make it easier to use. Am I making sense? So I'm trying to understand what is the underlying thing. Because with grid, if I'm not mistaken, we have item there, right? So if I say grid of, let's say like this, and then I can say item, background, arrow, pink. Okay, and it looks like that.
Yep.
Right? That's nice. That means now it may not be so nice if I want to add things up in the grid, but grid is primarily a display thing, so it doesn't matter so much, right? But I mean, so I think I can say frame arrow true here,
Yep.
right? So this is a nice mechanism. This is easy to deal with. I know that this is going to get moved around when I do things with the grid. Now here, this item thing,
I
the
mean,
whole thing.
let's say that was available on input, on various kinds of inputs to Tabular.
Yep.
It would then have to be stripped and stored somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly so. Yes, completely.
Mhm.
Right? Just like units, just like a million other things get stripped.
Yeah, I mean, and also for graph input, those things get stripped and put into those options that you.
Yep. Right. So I mean, in terms of I want to make a tabular and I'm going to put this. So now what have we got to do? We've got to be able to make, if we can do things like this, I don't know how to do the rows, okay, yet. Although I could imagine I mean, I don't know how to do the rows. Now, for grid, is there any way to style the row? Does it work to do this, for example?
No,
Okay, is there any way
no.
to style the row?
You can't do anything on a row at all. It's the only valid element of the top level list is other lists.
Okay, all right, okay, fine.
So
But
so you can pass in an option that works on the row, but not not directly on the element on
right.
the row. There is no such thing as a row element. So that's what
Okay.
I'm trying to say.
Okay, we got two things we want to do. We want to have something which just structurally goes to, the 27th row and makes it green or whatever, right? And then we want to do something which goes to the row that has, trees in it and make that green, which happened to be the 27th row when you first entered the tabular, but then it's going to be moved around, right? So we really want to attach that as an annotation to that row, right? As opposed to attaching it to the thing at that row position. Am I making sense?
Right.
Okay, so we got two mechanisms we're trying to deal with. So because things like row backgrounds is going to be purely, in whatever the appearance of it's just putting down a cookie cutter once the tabular is already there.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yep.
So the other one is data dependent, rides with the data type thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the not riding with the data, I think we're reasonably close on the design. Except for the fact that if I wanted to do this, of highlighting this particular element, we don't have a great way to do that right now.
Do we have the item options in place yet?
Yes, item background and item style works. But I tried the frame, but the frame doesn't work. I'll have to look into it why it's not working. But
Table view doesn't support individual frame elements in the content area yet, only in the headers.
I see.
Okay.
Sorry,
But-
sorry. I got distracted for a second. Could you say it again?
Changing the foreground and background works with item style and item background
In what? In Tabular?
in Tabular.
Okay. So how does item style work then?
It would be a position go to style. So right, so item style is overlapping with the old item style. In the tabular, the item style really means just the item. So you have to specify.
You know what? You can't do that. You can't do that. We're going to have to figure out how to merge these
Right.
designs. Okay,
Right.
you can't do that.
Right.
But I think item options are part of the solution to what you're talking about.
Yes, I agree. So look, there are two things that I think we need here. Okay. One is sort of outside in things where you say something like row background goes to whatever. Okay. That is purely based on how the tabular is laid out right now. The second thing we need is things that ride with the data. Okay. So how are we going to make things that ride with the data? There are several possibilities. One is an item wrapper around the actual payload. Okay. Now, the problem with that is we don't know how to do that for rows or for columns. Okay. Another possibility would be that it's tabular all the way down and we have a column that is the style column. Am I making sense? People understand what I'm saying?
No.
Really?
Style. Oh, that was what you talked about early on. A
Yes.
style column.
Yes, there are two possibilities here.
Oh, that's weird.
Okay.
Okay.
Possibility. Okay. Look, the outer things like row background, that's not a problem. We can do that. Okay. I'm talking about, okay, let's just, where do I put this? Okay. Case one,
I think there are
you know,
three things that we do, whether they're sort of data dependent or not.
well,
It's
positional formatting.
background, foreground, decorators.
Okay, look, there's positional formatting. There's writing with the data, writing with the elements formatting.
Yep.
And there's also a sort of variant of positional formatting. I mean, I'm thinking there's function application formatting.
I mean,
But wait
the
a
first,
second, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. So this is probably a subcase of positional formatting. Go ahead, what were you going to say?
there's data independent formatting. There's data dependent formatting.
Right, well, this is data dependent.
Definitely. And when you talk about data independent formatting, we 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 talk about sort of two things. Either the thing's going to be moving around and it gets attached, or it's that particular row, column, however it's rearranged.
Yes, I mean, there's the positional case and there's the writing with the elements case.
Right. I mean, the writing with the elements case is in some ways the function application formatting case, except that the function application was in your head.
Well, yeah, but it depends. For the function application case to work, we've got to have an item-like thing that formats the whole cell, not just the content of the cell. See what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I mean, depending on how far you want to go, yes.
No, we got to be able to do that. You've got to be able to color the whole background of that cell, some color, not just color something shrink wrapped around the number, some color.
And we can do that.
We
How?
have both background and foreground.
No, you have that in some hacky way where this thing that you have, where somehow this thing, when it has a rule in it, magically means
No,
the
no,
background.
no,
That's
no.
goofy.
Everything that's background is called background. Things that style but not called background is foreground.
No, I understand, but this is goofy.
It's a bit
This
goofy.
this is goofy. You agree?
A little bit, yeah.
Yes. This isn't the right way to do it. The right way to do it is what we've done. Well, hold on. The right way to do it is what we've done in grid, which is to use item for this.
Which would then have a background option in it.
That's correct. But you don't have a naked option that we don't know what the hell it means there.
Well, but the problem is that if that is the case, that means you have to have a handle on the cell value itself, right? You would have an item and the slot and comma background
Yeah,
equal to something.
okay. That
But
potentially that's fine.
right, but that also means that you could just throw away the slot.
Well,
Then
you could, but I don't know whether you want to. I mean, look, let me just be clear about something, okay? The problem with grid right now is we put in all these options. You can, in principle, get to almost anything, okay? But it's very hard to get there because there's so many sublists and this and that and the others. Okay, nobody can remember how to get there. I would much prefer in grid to have something where I have to write more code that I can remember without looking anything up or without asking an LLM how to do it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So how would you feel about row style function, row background function, etc.?
What does row background function do?
It doesn't exist. It would basically be what you have there, but without the background option.
No, I don't think it's a good idea because I think there are many different options that you might want to use. I think we want something like style or like item that can take all sorts of backgrounds. Are you going to have a row frame function as well?
I'd rather not.
Right, so it's not going to work, right? Because there are all these different options that you might give. There are things like mouse over options, right? Do you want a mouse over for this whole thing, for example? See what I'm saying?
But that would be just on the item display function, right? Because item display function exactly does what you said. It gives you the value itself as
No,
a
no,
handle.
it's not good enough because it needs an
Mhm.
item wrapper.
Yes, and then you can wrap the value with item.
Okay, fine, fine. Does that work right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you scroll to the
Okay.
example for the
I
item,
got to be practical here. I have something else I really got to do at this. We can. Hold on a second. Second, I need to. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Yeah. Okay, look, you know what? I'm gonna have to go. Sorry.
Okay, we've opened it up.
We need to continue this within a day or two because this is a complicated.
It is.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to go.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We continue.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.